Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me, and please continue to do the work that you're doing with foster care children, with adopted children. My name is Beth Sheba Rem, and I'm a professor at Clark Atlanta University. I'm a 2021, that's right, this year, Grammy-nominated spoken word artist. I was adopted at the age of 2.5 after about 2 years of red tape. I was born in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I was adopted out of Battle Creek, Michigan, and then the family that adopted me was living in Jackson, Michigan, and we moved to Detroit, Michigan. Yes, the city of Detroit proper, where I grew up. And I was adopted by an all-white family. And as I was grappling with my identity, then I became an award-winning writer, poet, and author. I've been a spoken word artist for 20 years. That is my big umbrella. And I have traveled all over the world. I've been to over 10 countries, and I'm always happy to help with the work and the advocacy. I can never say that word right. Advocacy. Say that 10 times fast. Work with adopted and foster care children. As a matter of fact, some years ago, some friends of mine and I were going around to foster care homes and youth homes, foster care homes and youth homes here in Detroit, here in Atlanta, and doing poetry for them. We also had a prison tour that my friend in Florida helped to organize. And so we are always doing work for people that are unheard or unseen. However, I also know that being adopted, you can have some great, amazing success stories. And I thank you again for Heart Child Ministries for doing this work and for reaching out. And I really appreciate you having me. So today is Saturday, November the 20th. And my name is Queen Sheba. Again, I'm a 2021 Grammy-nominated spoken word artist for my works on Robert Glasper's album, and I currently have an album up for the Grammys for this year, so wish me luck. All right, so this is a short story. It's called Junior Olympics, and it talks about, so I've always been a runner, literally and figuratively. So I started running when I was 12 years old. I did a lot of sports growing up. My parents, when I talk about my parents, I'm talking about my adopted parents. So my parents always had me into sports because I always have a lot of energy, and they were trying to find a way to harness my anger, trying to figure out who I am. And so I started running when I was 12, and this is one of the stories I wrote about that, called Junior Olympics, and it always intertwines with me being adopted. So here we go. Junior Olympics. The smell of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies from scratch linger in the air. I bounced down the steps 2 at a time in my homemade pink pajamas with fuzzy feet. I knew about logos at an early age. This one had a rabbit on it. Father would joke and say, "You made boy and girl cookies because some of them had nuts." You laughed while placing them proportionately in 3 brown paper bags my older brother Kevin, father, and I would depart with the next morning. My cookies never made it to school, either eaten on the way or traded for some chocolate peanut butter combination I still crave during those certain times of the month and on other special occasions. It was at the end of a 2-week Christmas break. I was anxious to get back to school. I loved school. I hated being home. It was boring. There was only so many things you could do with snow, and you made me do stupid stuff like read. And then I had to tell you what the book was about, like you didn't know. You're already an educator. You knew what I knew. You're the one that brought me the book from the library. You read it. I would always be smart and sassy and say, this yelling, of course, was always going on in my head. I knew better. I was taller than you even then, but Father, whoa, I digress. To keep me and my overactive brain busy, you would challenge me to memorize the state capitals and practice long division. Your way to get me to do it, say that I couldn't. Irony still seems to work today. I despised you. I wanted to go to the mall with the other 12-year-olds with no money. You said there was no point in going if I didn't have any money. It would only provoke me to steal. If you lie, you steal. If you steal, you kill. You chant in a nursery rhyme tone disguised as a social warning. Most of the time was spent dressing up from head to toe in clothes that I got for Christmas and standing at our window for hours watching cars splash mud on passerbyers. By the end of the first week, I couldn't take it anymore. You asked far too much of me. Really? Take out the trash with He-Man coming on in 2 minutes? So I pretend to take out the trash because I'm 12 and I can outsmart you. I decided to leave it on the side of the house and run away, thinking this would solve everything. I sprinted down the block, vowing never to come back to this horrific household of chores, responsibility, and learning. It was obscene to ask a preteen to think during vacation. How could you? I stood at the end of the block fuming, plotting all the ways I'd make you pay and suffer for your cruelty. Just as I was ready to make my mad dash to freedom and take on the world at 12 years old, an overwhelming sensation took over my body. Ice. Yeah, I had forgotten my coat. Realizing this was a lose-lose situation and He-Man was probably half over, I pried my frozen Asics from the ground and returned to you sipping from a mug of hot chocolate and holding a belt. It didn't dawn on me until later that your hour-long speech about how big and ferocious Detroit is and how 12-year-olds should never be alone and where was I going anyway was just your ploy to get my buns to thaw out, stalling until father got home. Key in the door and you suddenly grew wary of preaching. Nice move, Mom. The minute he walked in, you handed the belt to him and gave him the speed reader version of my great escape from the trash. As if the belt had magic powers, his exhaustion from work recharged the longer he gripped the rawhide, and the buckle lit up and sparks flew everywhere as it whizzed through the air. Like a ballerina coming down from being on a performance high, I leaped and spun to avoid the blows. Over the next few years, making the city track team was a mistake turned into a healthy outlet for an angry adopted child. There was that blinding winter morning when the rising sun bounced sunbeams off the ice and snow, and then it pulled back again as if it didn't want to get out of bed at 6 a.m. either. It was one of those days where everything was late. One of those mornings when you start late, you end late. And everything in between is running behind the exact amount of time you left on the snooze button. Every time the alarm went off, more minutes were added to the procrastination. Formula for a stressful day. How? Calculate how much longer you could sleep than you had time left. Still getting dressed in the car, steam increased from the exhaust pipe on the yellow-bellied school bus, now turned industrial gray from Detroit's morning rush hour smog, slowly scraping the ground meant 7:15 a.m. was here and I wasn't. The car didn't come to a complete stop before I flung open the door to the house-sized Caprice Classic grandmother gave us after the 1976 pea green Nova broke down the month before. The warmth of your breath etched the words, "Have a great day at school," and icicle letters that seemed to shatter and disappear in the air as the door slammed behind me. Now I was wide awake. I was hurtling 3-foot snow caps effortlessly. Gallop broke to stride, backpack bouncing to the rhythm of each connection, heel to pavement, lungs filled with frozen needles. I yelled, "Wait!" with my blue mitten in the air waving snowflakes from my sight path. The school bus doors flung open, and a substitute bus driver was grinning harder than that disappearing Cheshire cat. He hands me his business card out of thin air. "Have your parents call me," he said. That night, I sit at the table, knee bouncing like a jackhammer, waiting the outcome of this business card business. Father was on the phone talking to the substitute bus driver with less expression on his face than a Friday night poker game. It was hard to determine the content of his He hung up the phone and gave me the news. Track? At 12? What was this trying to keep me healthy and fit and active thing? Another ploy to harness my energy. They were scheming again. The only running I wanted to do was behind 8th grade boys. 16 years later, dust rarely rarely hits the row of my medals I keep by my bedside in chronological order of my wins. 16 years later, dust rarely hits the row of medals I keep by my bedside in chronological order of wins. There's a gap between Junior Olympics 91 and 92. I pinned it on father's shirt in 97. It was my first trip home since 86. I thought he might be able to show it to God when he got there. Since heaven has always been taught as a place of bliss, I've always believed no one would recognize anyone when granted admittance to keep away the pain of memories. Father cried in the hospital a few days before he passed. I told him I thought he was always so hard on me because he loved his boys more. Tears made chalky lines down his sunken cheeks and the plaster the cancer was turning his skin into. I'd never seen this vulnerability in his overwhelming frame before. He said he was always so hard on me because he didn't want me to turn out like his boys. He pushed me because he was proud of me. He thought I could always do better. I stopped racing in 1992 when I graduated high school. Now we're divorced, if we can be divorced. You sent me a card for my birthday. I got it late. I didn't even read it, ripped it open for the money and used the lousy $20 for gas and a bottle of water. I only make cookies from frozen batter, and the only thing I sew are rips along the seams and buttons on old jackets. Now I write for a living, for anger management, and have taken to practicing math problems while keeping slam scores. Recently, God stripped me of several things I thought meant something to me. Just the other day, I decided to take up racing again, rekindle my relationship with 6 a.m., feel weightless against the ground, let the wind cut through my lungs in the mornings as I whiz past the onlookers. Countless numbers of city blocks swoosh by me in a blur while my mind is distracted by my list of things to do. We don't have Michigan winters here in Georgia, but sometimes, right in the middle of winter, it gets cold enough for mittens. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me, and I hope you enjoyed the reading. Peace. You can always follow me on Instagram and Facebook at The Queen Sheba, Sheba. Thank you.